In bad morning, everyone. Today is October 25th, 2018. Welcome to episode 69 of Bad Morning News, where we will cover typically negative news, but in an important way that is vital instead of just trying to bury ourselves in saccharine crap from the mainstream media. So thanks for joining us today. A couple notes. Thank you to Brave Browser for sponsoring the show. If you were tired of the typical corporations out there selling your information to the highest bidder, give Brave Browser a try. If you download their browser via the link in the description box, it will benefit Bad Morning News. So thanks to anyone for who's considering doing that. And another note, we are looking for more hosts for Bad Morning News. If you are interested in either this morning slot or potentially an afternoon slot down the road, let us know in the Discord or in the comments of this video. We'd love to have more hosts here, and just let us know if you're interested in that. And with that, I'm Cryptic Cynic with you guys here today. And we will jump right in to this morning's negative news. I hope you all have had caffeine or more to tequila. In any case, this first article's from our good friend Lupinit. This week's bomb scare. This week's bomb scares are a perfect misinformation storm, written by Issy Lepowski, and this is from Wired.com. At least 5 explosive devices and suspicious packages targeting the homes of prominent Democrats and the New York offices of CNN have been intercepted this week, sending the internet's misinformation machine into a tailspin. On Wednesday, news broke that 2 packages were intercepted en route to the home of former President Barack Obama, as well as that of Bill and Hillary Clinton, the former president and Secretary of State. Another containing a pipe bomb and an envelope of white powder was discovered in the CNN building mailroom. The news set off a wave of reports about additional packages targeting other liberal leaders, including former DNC chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The FBI later said that Wasserman Schultz was listed on the return address of all the packages. Meanwhile, false reports of a bomb sent to the White House quickly spread, while partisans on both sides ginned up unproven theories about who was behind the attempted bombings or whether there were really any bombs at all. There were. As with any breaking news story, the conversation you see online may not always represent the truth. Here's what we know so far. On Monday night, an explosive device was found at the suburban New York home of billionaire philanthropist, and Democratic donor George Soros. The pipe bomb, affixed with a detonator, was reportedly hand-delivered, not sent through the mail, and discovered by a caretaker who then called the police. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force is investigating the matter, but as of Wednesday morning hadn't produced any results. Then early Wednesday morning, reports of 3 additional bombs emerged. According to the Secret Service, on Tuesday night, agents intercepted a suspicious package addressed to Hillary Clinton at her home in Chappaqua, New York. The next morning, Secret Service discovered a second package addressed to Obama's Washington, D.C. home. The packages were immediately identified during routine mail screening procedures and as potential explosive devices and were appropriately handled as such, the Secret Service wrote. Both packages were intercepted prior to being delivered to their intended location. The protectees did not receive the packages, nor were they at risk of receiving them. Shortly after that story broke, CNN's Offices at the Time Warner Center in New York were evacuated after the mailroom received a suspicious package. In a press conference, NYPD Commissioner James O'Neill confirmed that the package included a live explosive device and an envelope full of white powder. According to the FBI, the device was addressed to former Central Intelligence Agency head John Brennan, who is now a contributor to MSNBC. This clearly is an act of terror attempting to undermine our free press and leaders of this country through acts of violence, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said at the press event. Police also responded on Wednesday to the suspicious package at the Sunrise, Florida office of Wasserman Schultz. According to the FBI, the package was actually addressed to Eric Holder, the former Attorney General, but because it listed Wasserman Schultz as the return address, it was rerouted to her Florida office. All of these packages were sent in manila envelopes with 6 stamps and computer-printed address labels. While the FBI has only confirmed 5 targets, a 6th package intercepted by a congressional mail facility and addressed to Representative Maxine Waters of California is also investigation. Capitol Police didn't respond to Wired's request for comment, and the FBI has not listed Waters as a target. Throughout the day, an avalanche of additional supposed targets, including New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and Senator Kamala Harris, also from California, were named, only to be disputed later by officials. Let's say this first: local and federal authorities are in the process of investigating these incidents. This investigation is of the highest priority for the FBI. We have committed the full strength of the FBI's resources, and together with our partners on our joint terrorism task forces, we will continue to work to identify and arrest whoever is responsible for sending these packages. FBI Director Christopher Wray said in a statement, "They have not commented on who the bomb maker may be nor their potential motives." President Trump condemned the acts Wednesday afternoon from the White House. Acts or threats of political violence of any kind have no place in the U.S., he said. "We're extremely angry, upset, unhappy about what we witnessed this morning, and we will get to the bottom of it." But the lack of evidence as to the perpetrators didn't stop the outrage machine on the left from blaming the attempted attacks on their opponents on the right, nor did it stop fringe voices on the right from calling the bomb scares false flag attacks. Even before bombs were discovered en route to the Obama and Clinton homes, QAnon's conspiracy theorists were waving false flag theories about the bomb scare at the Soros home on the internet message board 4chan on Wednesday. The notion that the whole thing was actually a hoax bled onto Twitter, where Pizzagate proponent Michael Flynn Jr. wrote that the bomb scares were a political stunt. Far-right radio personality Bill Mitchell tweeted these explosive packages being sent to the media, and high-profile Democrats has Soros astroturfing written all over it, so the media can paint the GOP as the dangerous mob. As these conspiracies spread, liberal voices were just as quick to pin the blame on Republicans without knowing anything about the bombers' identity or motives. "You own this, GOP, every last ugly iota of the destruction of our democracy," wrote Peter Dow, a former Clinton advisor. Another vocal Clinton advisor, Philippe Reines, tweeted at President Trump with the message, "This is on you." In the middle of all this, false reports of another bomb being sent to the White House began to spread. CNN reported it, then rescinded the report. Former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin shared the rumor with her 1.51 million Twitter followers, writing, "Breaking for potential bomb scares just happened at the White House, homes of Clinton's, Obama's, and New York building." The Secret Service quickly corrected the claim, writing that reports of a third intercepted package addressed to the White House are incorrect. Cuomo, meanwhile, said at a press conference that his office had been targeted too, but an NYPD spokesperson tells Wired the package was deemed to be non-suspicious. The building where both the San Diego Tribune and Harris have offices was also evacuated, stirring speculation of another suspicious package bound for the senator, but her office dispelled the rumor, saying the package was not addressed to and was not deemed to be an explosive device. These bomb scares have formed a perfect storm for misinformation. First came a torrent of breaking news reports, which are always riddled with holes and unanswered questions. Who sent the packages? Who were they addressed to? What was inside? Were they really all bombs? Add to that the fact that the incidents involve high profile, polarizing figures in American politics who already are the frequent subjects of misinformation campaigns, and that the country is just weeks away from a contentious midterm election. Put it all on social media where anyone can baselessly speculate and fearmonger, and you get a deluge of unintentionally false reporting, partisan finger pointing, and bad faith conspiracy theories. The investigation will take time, and not just because mail moves through the postal system at different speeds. The FBI warns that additional packages may be out there. With the country's political leaders on alert, there will likely be more false reports made as the FBI and U.S. Postal Service work to put the pieces together. As these reports arise, it's imperative to be vigilant at a time when someone is targeting members of a political party with bombs. The last thing anyone needs is misinformation, making the situation more explosive. That's the end of that article. So I'm sure you all have heard about this by now from one outlet or another or on Twitter, like I did yesterday. But this piece is from a pretty mainstream site, and they are uh, more charitable towards the government and the three-letter agencies than I certainly would be. And of course, throwing around conspiracy theory. Uh, I just want to note, it's interesting that outlets like this, like mainstream whatever outlets, why is it that they're so willing to throw out conspiracy theory, but only in reference to what they refer to as right wing types and as well as social media types, but the Democrats and liberals who immediately are blaming it all on Trump. Yet that's not worthy of the label conspiracy, just like RussiaGate is supposed to be taken very seriously and is not at all a conspiracy theory. But I guess in the mainstream, conspiracy theory is more of a pejorative they can throw at the those crazy right wingers. Even though I think many sensible people out there have reason to question. I think anyone who's thinking is has a good reason to question any official story out there without being crazy or without being right wing. I'm certainly not right wing, and I am skeptical of any claim put forth by the government or mainstream media because that's based in historical reality, not on being right wing. But in any event, I digress. But as this article says, there were a lot of conflicting reports even among the media, and I would say maybe again the article is presenting it as well. It's just confusion, this and that. I'm not willing to be that charitable. I think there's certainly a possibility of deliberate leaking of information, then taking it back. And, the government knows that if any little bit of information leaks out, that it's going to be immediately believed. And even if they pretend to retract it later, it doesn't really help, just given the way things work in people's minds. And but one thing the article does say accurately that certainly, people on whatever side, on the left and right, at least, are, quick to believe what they want to believe. And of course, the left, is immediately crying victim, boo-hoo. Our dear Lord and Saviors, Obama and Hillary, and whoever, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, are being targeted. Um, and yeah, I mean, and of course, the right, would not like that to be the case as well. And I think it is, the fact that the midterms are coming up. I mean, you can't discount that. In cases like this, one always should ask the question, cui bono? Who benefits from this pandemonium and chaos and fear happening at such a convenient time? Um, I'm sure many of you have heard of the term October surprise. Well, here we are. Perfect timing, October, for another dramatic story. My local news here was saying, the nation's on alert. It's like, really, I didn't realize that I should be on alert because some really amateur looking explosives, or according to some reports, explosives that were not even functional, were mailed to people who they know would never receive them personally. So, of course, all of this alarmist language is again in all the on all the TVs and whatnot, newspapers that people see to manufacture that fear. And I think it's worth looking at the Hegelian dialectic, the cycle of uh, action, reaction, solution, or problem, reaction, solution, where there's a problem, whether it's manufactured or even if it is legitimate, that the people will then have a reaction of fear and hysteria, and demand a solution to it, which often results, if not always, results in us losing our liberties and being further surveilled and further treated as cattle in a tax farm. So I think it's totally healthy to question narratives of people who've been proven to lie uh, almost nonstop about, especially things like this. So I would just say, don't let the pejorative conspiracy theory term uh, lead you away from being skeptical. And just as an aside, uh, we already know from actual FBI documents, or actual FOIA release documents, that the term conspiracy theory was created by the CIA to attack people and cast aspersion on people who question their narratives, and it seems to have worked very well. Since all of the mainstream outlets and leftist outlets will just immediately call you crazy conspiracy theorist, like you're hiding in your bug out shelter with tin foil on your head, just because you don't immediately believe these proven liars. So with that, I will check out comments here. And Danielle says, bad morning to you and to everybody here. Daniel says, don't believe the crazy right wing. Source, leftist wearing a pussy hat with a I'm with her / hashtag Russia did it t-shirt. Exactly. Danielle says it is crazy the way the leftist politicians want to pin this on Trump, thereby feeding the public discord more. Shaking my head. Daniel says they were, at least for the most part, nonpartisan for once. Maybe they realize they are in part responsible for the mess we are now in. Danielle says, yes, the double standard is gross. Yeah, I mean, at least the article does try to throw some cold water on, all of this. Of course, all the liberals coming out and saying, this is another effect of Trump being whatever, being not being the type of person they want him to be, and sowing discord. And I mean, I think there's elements of truth to that, but that's just as true for the Democratic Party as well. And if you recall, Hillary just came out like a week or two ago saying we shouldn't be civil with our enemies. Well, congrats, you got what you wanted apparently. So, uh, yeah, I mean it's just empty partisanship again. Unfortunately, it's what everything has descended into in this country and elsewhere. I yeah, I mean I can recall the Bush years and it didn't even seem as polarized then as it is now. And apparently George W. Bush is bosom buddies with a bunch of liberals now. Ellen DeGeneres had had him on her show and treated him like he was an old friend or something when 10, 15 years ago he was like he was the then uh, literal demon or literal Nazi du jour. So with in any case, I mean, staying with this story, there is a new report this morning of more alleged packages, so I will read that article. Let's see, I found this one, king5.com. This is through the Associated Press. Suspicious pad receives Bomb Squad move one sent to Robert De Niro, reports of another in Delaware. Initial media reports said the Delaware package may have been addressed to Joe Biden. I wonder if it was addressed to Creepy Joe. A package addressed to former Vice President Joe Biden, a Delaware mail enforcement official said the package appeared similar to the packages containing bombs sent to prominent Democrats. The official, who wasn't authorized to discuss the ongoing investigation, publicly told the Associated Press. Separately, oh god, sorry. The FBI confirmed there was law enforcement activity at the U.S. mail facility in Newcastle, Delaware. Federal agents and Newcastle County Police were responding to the facility. Biden lives in Delaware, and a police sweep of his Greenville home turned up nothing on Wednesday. Separately, a New York City police bomb squad removed another suspicious package from a Manhattan building associated with Robert De Niro Thursday morning, police said. A law enforcement source told the AP that the device appeared to be linked to the others sent this week. The package looked similar to the others and had a similar device inside. The source said the NYPD said the device was taken from 375 Greenwich Street in the Tribeca neighborhood around 6:30 a.m. Thursday. That's the same address as De Niro's Tribeca Grill and the Tribeca Film Center. A spokesman said police were called for a report of a suspicious package at the location around 5 a.m. Video showed a bomb squad unit driving in a caravan through the city after leaving the neighborhood. Authorities said Wednesday the pipe bombs sent to prominent Democrats and CNN's New York office were packed with shards of glass and were intercepted. None of the 7 bombs detonated and nobody was hurt as authorities in New York, D.C., Florida, and California seized the suspicious packages. And let's see. This is a developing story. Check back for updates. And then I just saw another article. Actually, I don't know if that's an old one or not. In any case, so apparently it's expanding, and now even liberal movie stars are being targeted if this is to be believed. I guess someone doesn't like De Niro's films, perhaps, or maybe they don't like the Tribeca Film Festival, and maybe, according to the story, Biden supposedly received something. Maybe people can't imagine why anyone would dislike creepy Uncle Joe, but this, I mean, just to me, like, honestly, in my opinion, if this many things go out and not even one of them goes off, that seems just really convenient that all of them are intercepted and none of them go off. And you would imagine, I mean, someone commented yesterday on Twitter, back in the what 70s or 80s, IRA, there were IRA bombings in uh, Northern Ireland all the time that went off, and yet today, with all the technology, no one's able to create one that can successfully explode. It's very odd when you think about it. I mean, of course, for the NSA listening out there, I'm not endorsing bombing people. I'm not, necessarily cheering for anyone's death. But I'm just saying it's just very odd to me why, so many packages conveniently can be sent out and intercepted, and but none of them go off at all. So you just get all the fear and no actual uh, damage or injury. But all it takes is the threat to stir everyone up into a frenzy, and again, have this national panic as the media would like us to have. But I think it's important to just keep things in perspective. Even if this is real, I don't even think that would warrant national panic by every person or especially any average person just going about their day. And there's a reason why most people are able to get by without being threatened or injured, because, people who just want to live their lives aren't, you know, we're not the ones out there pulling all the strings and desperate for attention. I mean, politicians enjoy the attention. They enjoy being in control. So, you know, uh, I don't know. In any case, let me check the comments. Comments being. Alright. Okay. But yeah, so this is obviously still developing. And who knows where it's going to at Robert De Niro at this point. I don't know who's next. Maybe some more pop culture figures. That would be pretty bizarre, in my opinion. So this next article is from EFF.org. Italy steps up to defend EU internet users against copyright filters. Who will be next? Written by Danny O'Brien. The latest news from Brussels: Italy is not happy with Article 13 or Article 11 and wants them gone. What is going on with Europe's meme filtering Article 13 and the hyperlink meddling Article 11 after the proposals sneaked over the finish line in a close European parliamentary vote in July? The decision-making has dipped out of the spotlight into the back rooms of the EU. Behind the scenes, attitudes are still shifting against the new internet rules. Italy's domestic government has now taken a strong position against the bill. If they hear from EU citizens, other governments may shift too. The copyright in the Digital Single Market Directive, the legal instrument that hold both articles, is now in its trilogue phase. That's where the governments of the EU's member countries send their permanent representatives and legal experts to huddle in meeting rooms with the parliament's negotiators and thrash out a text that works for the Central European Parliament and the governments of individual European countries who have to implement and enforce it. Under normal circumstances, the trilogue should be a fine-tuned bureaucratic debate on the subtle legal details of the directive, with member states contributing their understanding of their own legal systems, and the Parliament's negotiators offering to change wordings to reflect those practicalities. but Articles 13 and 11 have never been part of a normal consensus-driven procedure. Parliament was divided over Articles 13 and 11, and even the member states don't agree with one another whether these provisions make sense. Back in May, when member countries met to settle on their original negotiating text, the national governments barely agreed between themselves on whether the directive should go forward, but the member states vote together as the European Council. A proposal fails if a blocking minority oppose it. That's either 13 member states by number or any number of states that combined hold more than 35% of the EU's population. In May or so, the EU gossip had it because these votes weren't made public. Germany, Finland, the Netherlands, Slovenia, Belgium, and Hungary all opposed the directive largely because of Article 13 and 11. With 25% of the EU population between them, their opposition wasn't enough to vote it down. Then, this July, Italy publicly switched sides after Italians rose up to warn their new government about the directive. Thank you, Italian internet users. The country's new deputy prime minister publicly voiced his concern about the proposals. Since then, Italy has been the strongest proponent of the EU at the EU of getting rid of the two articles altogether. Italy also holds 11% of the EU population, tipping the total opposition among the states to over 36%. So why isn't this the end of Article 13 and 11 fiasco? There may now be sufficiently large opposition to the articles to create a blocking minority if they all vote together, but the new bloc has not settled on a united answer. Other countries are suspicious of Italy's no compromise approach. They want to add extra safeguards to the two articles, not kill them entirely. That includes some of the countries that were originally opposed in May, including Germany. Axel Voss, Article 13 and 11 strongest advocate in the parliament, won his pro-Article 13/11 victory there by splitting the opposition in a similar way. Some members of parliament voted for amendments to delete the articles entirely, while others voted for various separate compromises, but Voss was able to coordinate all those who supported the articles to unite to vote in favor of just his proposals. His single setup of pro-Article 13 and 11 amendments beat out many individual opposing amendments. That's where matters stand now. A growing set of countries who think copyright filters and link taxes go too far, but no agreement yet on rejecting or fixing them. The trilogues are not a process designed to resolve such large rifts when both the EU states and the Parliament are so deeply divided. What happens now depends entirely on how the member states decide to go forward and how hard they push for real reform of Articles 13 and 11. The balance in that discussion has changed because Italy changed its position. Italy changed its position because Italians spoke up. If you reach out to your country's ministry in charge of copyright and tell them that these articles are a concern to you, they'll start paying attention too, and we'll have a chance to stop this terrible directive from becoming terrible law across Europe. That's the end of that story. So, I guess some good news in that Italy is now coming out and saying they want to completely get rid of Article 13 and 11, but the downside is that, of course, the opposition is split basically, and it's easier for the side that supports Articles 13 and 11 to, unify behind just that one proposal instead of the opposition trying to come to a compromise or a decision about what exactly they want to propose that would either, I guess, limit Articles 13 and 11 or completely dispose of them. But it is good to at least hear that there's a chance, hopefully, because I know, there's been a lot of people saying how awful these articles would be. Essentially calling it a meme tax or a ban on memes or a link tax, preventing people from even linking to articles. I guess just a lot of ridiculousness again served up by the extreme centralization of this European Union body. It seems ridiculous that all these countries are voting on something, and the ones that lose will have it imposed on them regardless. And to me, again, it's just another reminder of why more decentralization is good, and if possible, it should be decentralized down to the individual level. Um, but yeah, seeing things like this go on is certainly very bizarre. It's similar, in my mind, it's just similar to the United States, having 50 states that are independent in a lot of ways, but then also forced uh, to, have things forced upon them either by the Supreme Court or other federal laws and regulation. All right, let's see the comments here. Danielle says, it seems like nothing will stop the hostilities. No one seems to learn anything. And Danielle says the motive for this is still unclear. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's a really bizarre time right now, just the level of hostility, and obviously a lot of people are talking about that, including those who are responsible for it. It's interesting when I see a lot of liberals out there, on the one hand, complain that the country is so divided, but then, of course, anyone who doesn't agree with, their worldview or the things that they want implemented is just racist, bigoted, or whatever. Um, Nothing can really go forward in that kind of environment. Um, yeah, it just again makes me think of people who will say, no one's representing the people, and the people need to get their voice out and their vote out. And the question is, who is this? The people, as if there's one common mindset among every single person, every like 300 some million person in America has the same ideas, and that's obviously not true. So it's kind of this hypocrisy within the idea of democracy. On the one hand, people hold it up as though it is the same as individual liberty, but then it's treated as a collective, and that's what it is. It's majority rule, mob rule. So of course, it's not going to respect every individual. It's just going to be whoever comes out with the 51% at the time gets to impose themselves on the other 49%, and that's not a unified voice in any sense. And yeah, I'll definitely keep following what happens with Article 13 and Article 11, as it would have a huge impact, obviously, on the ability of people to freely express themselves online because of bullshit intellectual property crap, and all of that. So this next article comes from ZeroHedge.com by their writer, Arms Race, Nations Rush to Develop Hypersonic Weapons, authored by Max Slavo via shtfplan.com. There is one big and glaring sign that the United States seeks to thrust the globe back into an arms race. John Bolton being in Moscow to discuss its intent to withdraw from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. The end of the 31-year-old treaty signifies that potentially world powers will return to an arms race mentality, but there are some that believe the arms race is already upon us. According to NPR, over the past year, the US, China, and Russia have all stepped up to develop a weapon that can fly faster and farther than almost anything in existence. This kind of missile is known as a hypersonic weapon. These types of weapons could have the ability to travel at 5 times the speed of sound or more. They could strike at a target while evading missile defenses and hit almost anywhere without any warning deep inside enemy territory. In March, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced had successfully tested a hypersonic weapon known as the Kinzhal, the Russian word for dagger. The video below shows the Russian dagger. But the Chinese aren't lagging behind in this new arms race either. In August, China said it had conducted the first successful tests of a hypersonic prototype called Starry Sky 2. It flew for more than 5 minutes and reached speeds above 4,000 miles per hour, according to physicist James Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, who has studied hypersonic weaponry. Acton says these developments are just the beginning. Over the next few years, we're likely to see a lot of testing. Acton said because of these recent advancements in hypersonic weaponry, Mike Griffin, the Pentagon's Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, said he was worried the U.S. was losing its hypersonics, breaking research, weaponize it. We need to respond, Griffin said at a forum on missile defense on Capitol Hill, according to NPR. And the U.S. responded by stepping up their hypersonic weapons program. Earlier this year, the Air Force awarded $1.4 billion in contracts to Lockheed Martin to begin working on air-launched hypersonic weapons. Other agencies, such as the Defense Advanced Research Projects or DARPA, are also working on hypersonic weapons. Acton says advanced materials and supercomputers are helping hypersonic development. We are seeing Russia, the United States, and China all conducting hypersonic tests, he says. I would be surprised if there were no hypersonic next decade. And that's the end of that article. I guess it's the next frontier in the arms race is hypersonic weaponry that travels potentially more than 5 times the speed of sound. What great news! Gotta hand it to them. They continue to come up with new and ever more deadly and terrifying shit to potentially destroy people for I don't know what reason exactly. Um, Again, as I say a lot, the average person would never voluntarily support this type of idiocy. Basically, just a pissing contest between all the potential uh, world powers jostling for the most influence and the biggest missiles, the latest technology for destroying people, because it is fun for their development teams and Lockheed Martin and whatnot. And yeah, that's the quote from the Pentagon dude. Pretty funny. We where he says we came up with the research and they weaponized it. It's kind of like I don't know. That's just bizarre. It's like, well, that's what happens when you decide to grant, all millions of dollars in quote unquote defense research to all these universities that come up with dystopic technologies, and what's good for the goose is good for the gander. The idea that you'll have people researching this and that China and Russia aren't going to also want to in on that is pretty naive. Well, I don't really think it's naive. It's just an excuse on their part to, again, award more money to contractors to make sure that America has the most and best. Because the fact that the U.S. already spends more than the next, 7 to 10 countries below it, spends more than those countries combined on the military, isn't enough, and we need to be afraid that someone might get the next frontier cutting edge military munitions sooner than us, and can't have that. Try to check comments. Danielle says, "Back to the Future, a new Cold War." Yes, it seems these things just cycle through nonstop, and I don't know if there's been a point in history of the U.S. where there's been both this constant war. We've been in at least Afghanistan for over 17 years at this point, as well as having this rekindling of the Cold War arms race type thing with the Russia scare and as well as China. Um, so it's interesting that those two are like now combined to be occurring at the same time because I feel like at least over the 20th century, there was, the World Wars and then Korea and Vietnam, but those things, didn't necessarily co-occur as much. Like following the Vietnam War, there was a period of mostly just Cold War type stuff with the U.S. and Russia until 9/11 opened the door for another hot war for the U.S. to jump into, and it's just continued, and there's no end in sight. And I guess the government's intention is to acclimate us to endless war, and unfortunately, it seems to be working. And it's just mind-boggling to have a situation where you're in a country that's at war, in a hot war, and it's just been stretching on for 17 years, and people day to day really don't even understand why or any of those things or have, any real connection to it in most cases. And I think part of that could be because of the reduction of the uh, of typical infantry, old-fashioned infantry, and also obviously the ending of the draft, whereby many more people seem to have been affected when there was a mandatory draft in the past compared to now, where people voluntarily join the military, and it seems to be less of a uh, less of an issue in the minds of many people. Either they just don't know anyone personally who's been affected by the Afghan or Iraq War, compared to how many people were affected by, say, the Vietnam War or obviously World Wars One and Two. And a lot of articles have mentioned the shift in policy or a shift in strategy within the U.S. military to using a lot of these special forces types, the SEALs and Green Berets and all of that, instead of using just regular rank and file infantry, moving it towards smaller groups, perhaps to again keep the carnage, limited in terms of American troops dying, because there are less American troops dying. It's easy for people to just stay complacent and not be outraged about the 17-year-long war, that no one can say why it's still going on, but again, no one can stop it at this point. I mean, those of us who are average people, there's nothing we can do about it. So, with that, there's one more article I can see. I'll read this article from Activist Post. It is by Joe Genkai. Colonizing experiment in surveillance capitalism. Privacy expert resigns from project over surveillance concerns. A privacy expert tasked with protecting personal data within a Google-backed smart city project has resigned as her pro-privacy guidelines would largely be ignored by participants. I imagined us creating a smart city of privacy as opposed to a smart city of surveillance, and Cavoukian, the former privacy commissioner of Ontario, wrote in a resignation letter to Google's sister company Sidewalk Labs. I felt I had no choice because I had been told by Sidewalk Labs that all of the data collected will be de-identified at the source. She added Cavoukian was an acting consultant involved in the plan by Canada's Waterfront Toronto to develop a smart city neighborhood in the city's quayside development. She had created an initiative called Privacy by Design that aimed to ensure citizens' personal data would be protected. Once it became apparent that citizen privacy could not be guaranteed, Cavoukian decided it was time to leave the project. But then, at a Thursday meeting, Cavoukian reportedly realized such anonymization protocols could not be guaranteed. She told the Canadian news outlet that Sidewalk Labs revealed at that meeting that their organization could commit to her guidelines, but other involved groups would not be required to abide by them. Cavoukian realized third parties could possibly have access to identifiable data gathered through the project. When I heard that, I said, I'm sorry, I can't support this, I have to resign because you committed to embedding privacy by design into every aspect of your operation, she told Global News. Being touted as the world's first neighborhood built from the internet up, the Google-designed smart city is set to deploy an array of cameras and sensors that detect pedestrians at traffic lights or alert cleanup crews when garbage bins overflow, reports the Globe and Mail. Robotic vehicles will whisk away garbage in underground tunnels, heated bike lanes will melt snow, and a street layout will accommodate a fleet of self-driving cars. The city will also provide each citizen a user account, which will allow access to the various online services of the neighborhood and improve participatory democracy. Such an account could potentially work with facial recognition and allow, for example, a repairman to get into a home to perform his duties and firefighters to have access to a building when a fire alarm is triggered. The project's critics included former BlackBerry CEO Jim Basile, who referred to the development as a colonizing experiment in surveillance capitalism, attempting to bulldoze important urban, civic, and political issues. In an October op-ed, Balsillie described smart cities as the new battlefront for big tech and warned that the commercialization of IP and data within the city would mean that personal information would just be another target of corporate digital gold mining. Balsillie writes, the 21st century knowledge-based and data-driven economy is all about IP and data. Smart cities are the new battlefront for big tech because they serve as the most promising hotbed for additional intangible assets that hold the next $1 trillion to add to their market capitalizations. Smart cities rely on IP and data to make the vast array of city sensors more functionally valuable, and when under the control of private interests, as an enormous new profit pool. As Sidewalk Labs chief executive Dan Doctoroff said, we're in this business to make money. Sidewalk also wants full autonomy from city regulations as so it can build without constraint. You can only commercialize IP or data when you own or control them. That's why Sidewalk, as a recent Globe and Mail investigation revealed, is taking control to own all IP on this project. All smart companies know that controlling the IP controls access to the data, even when it's shared data. Stunningly, when Waterfront Toronto released its updated agreement, they left the ownership of IP and data unresolved, even though IP experts publicly asserted that ownership of IP must be clarified up front or it defaults to Sidewalk. Securing new monopoly IP rights coupled with best new datasets creates a systemic market advantage from which companies can inexorably expand. A privately controlled smart city infrastructure upends traditional models of citizenship because you cannot opt out of a city or society that practices mass surveillance. Foreign corporate interests tout new technocratic efficiencies while shrewdly occluding their unprecedented power grab. As the renowned technologist Evgeny Morozov said, that the city is also the primary target of big tech is no accident. If these firms succeed in controlling its infrastructure, they need not worry about much else. And Kavukian's decision to walk away from the project was made just weeks after Waterfront Toronto's Digital Strategy Advisory Panel member Sadia Muzaffar resigned over concerns about how Google will collect and handle data collected from people within the smart city. Sadia Muzaffar specifically pointed to Waterfront Toronto's astounding apathy and utter lack of leadership regarding shaky public trust and social license. Local residents remain concerned over the lack of transparency in regards to the project, as many believe the deal has been shrouded in secrecy. As Jim Basili described it, we are at a point where a secretive, unelected, publicly funded corporation with no expertise in IP, data, or even basic digital rights is in charge of navigating forces of urban privatization, algorithmic control, and rule by corporate contract. And that's the end of that article, and that was actually a pretty terrifying read. The idea of a smart city whereby everything is interconnected so that, including, all of these home technologies where, the article mentions it could let a repairman into your house without you being there to open the door and things like that, and letting robots know to come get the trash. I mean, really, are things that difficult as they are that we need to submit to some kind of completely dystopic, police state type environment just to have the trash picked up by robots? I don't. I mean, again, like I've said over the past, few days, if not longer, I don't understand where we got to the point where the idea of technology is so alluring that we need it to do all these basic things that have never seemed super difficult, and the trade-off just does not seem worth it. Where you're in a world that's centrally controlled by corporations, and not even just that they're corporations, but that it's totally ruled by technology. I mean, how can you expect any human element of concern about privacy when it's being run by computers, and they'd just like you to believe that things would run better if you just give up all of your your mistrust and skepticism about the people behind all of this technology and just give in and let them take over and make our lives easier. At least that's what they believe. But yeah, I mean, that's horrible. I wouldn't want to live in a city where, someone can push a button and open my door to whoever. I mean, I almost question why the people involved in this could possibly think it would be anything other than a horrible nightmare scenario. I mean, honestly, just knowing what we know about these corporations and what's been going on, the trajectory of surveillance in the past decade or longer, I mean, what would make them think that they would give a shit about privacy at all? I really don't know, honestly. Um, but with that, we're at the end of the hour, so I will check out if there's any other comments, and I'll end with some closing notes. Again, looking for more hosts for Bad Morning News. Let us know in Discord or in the comments if you are interested. And tomorrow is Community Day. Fridays just means we'll cover any stories any of you out there want covered. Just drop the links in the community links section in the Discord, and I will cover that tomorrow. And with that, it's a good place to end. This has been episode 69 of Bad Morning News for October 25th, 2018. And thank you all for being here. Bad morning to you, Danielle, as well as everyone. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, screw the state, fuck the system. Have a good day, bad morning. See you tomorrow.